RS today by comparison?
I don't know. I mean, so far there's political courage is a scarce commodity out there in Washington. Just look at what they're doing. I mean, even politicians that are leaving office, like George Bush, can't resist bailing out General Motors and Chrysler on the way out the door. I mean, he's not even got to stand for re-election. I mean, he can't even do anything on principle. So I don't know. I mean, these politicians are making one mistake after another. And I think the result is going to be a disaster for this economy and certainly for individual liberty and the Constitution, because the greater the problems that the government creates, the more individual liberties we surrender, because the government gets bigger and bigger and interferes more and more with the economy. And the result of their interference is that the economy gets worse. And every time it gets worse, they blame the free market, they blame capitalism, and they have the justification to get even bigger. And this is a self-perpetuating spiral where the end is horrific.
We need to take one more break for about 2 or 3 minutes here. When we come back, if you would entertain the question here, if the automakers were indeed allowed to fail, just as some of the banks, lending institutions, mortgage brokers, insurance companies, etc., would that bring about the collapse of the republic as we know it, or would the free market take over and the laws of economics take over? And while we may have some tough times, eventually we'd pull ourselves out of that. When we continue, Straight Talk ARN. Back to Straight Talk from ARN, Mr. Peter D. Schiff, our guest. Mr. Schiff, we are told that the automakers cannot be allowed to fail, the banks cannot be allowed to fail, the insurance brokers, the mortgage brokers cannot be allowed to fail. First, is that true? And if they did in fact fail, if they were allowed, just like you or me or any other individual or small business person allowed to fail, could the republic survive?
Sure. I mean, the republic is not going to survive because of all the bailouts. That is the problem. Of course, the people who are saying that the auto companies can't be allowed to fail are the auto company executives and employees who are overpaid and whose high wages would be ended by the free market. But instead, they want the rest of the country to subsidize the fact that they're paid above market wages, and they're working for companies that are not generating a profit. And, why should other workers who are working for profitable companies and as such are paying a fair wage, why should they be taxed to subsidize other people who are overpaid? I mean, the whole thing is nonsense. I mean, basically this is a political decision. You have highly powerful labor unions and auto executives who are in charge of political contributions, who are exacting political rent from the rest of us. If the government simply allowed General Motors and Ford, and Chrysler rather, to go bankrupt, yes, there would be some short-term pain, certainly for the people who work there, who are either going to lose their job or are going to see their pay cut. But it would not cascade. It would not destroy the economy the way the autos executives are trying to maintain. If anything, it would improve. Our automobile industry has been uncompetitive for years. The last thing we want to do is subsidize these uncompetitive companies. We need to let them go bankrupt. We need to free up all the resources that they're using improperly, all the land, labor, and capital. We need to let new entrepreneurs buy up those assets from the creditors and run them more efficiently so that we can have a vibrant, competitive automobile industry. I think if that were to happen and we were to let the free market restructure this industry, that 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, we can employ 2 or 3 times as many people in this country making cars as there are employed today. Sure, they would be employed at lower wages, but they would be working for profitable companies, and they would be making cars that people want to buy. In fact, we might be able to make cars that we can export, which is what we really need to do.
Sure.
We don't need to make any cars for ourselves right now, or very few of them. We're loaded up with cars that we can't afford. We need to produce and export our way out of this gigantic hole. We need to start earning some money, and we need to have a vibrant manufacturing industry. As I said, we need another industrial revolution, and a good place to start would be to let these companies go bankrupt, not because we don't need manufacturing, but because we desperately do.
Economically, is it possible to have continued financial success and economic prosperity in a service-oriented economy?
Well, it's impossible to have a service-oriented economy unless people don't want to consume real stuff. We can't keep importing stuff and exporting nothing. I mean, the whole service sector economy only existed as long as the world financed it. Just like a Ponzi scheme, right? Madoff's plan could exist so long as nobody wanted their money back. But in the long run, it's not viable. And our service sector economy is not viable in the long run. And unfortunately, I think we've arrived at the long run. So we have to abandon that phony economy and embrace a legitimate economy that is based on production. And that type of economy needs to be based on savings and underconsumption. We need to do the exact opposite of what we've been doing. You know, what the government is trying to do is get us to continue it, only even worse. They just want us to go into more deficits. They want us to buy more stuff when we're already broke.
In your life, and certainly in your line of business, I'm sure you have to be somewhat of a realist. Let me ask you to draw on that realism and draw on that characteristic and ask you, do you believe, realistically, do you believe that we're going to get out of this thing in any easy or any reasonable fashion, or is it almost inevitable that the way politicians are today, the way the special interest groups are, the way our government system works today, is it inevitable that we're going to see some doom and gloom?
Well, look, there's going to be doom and gloom regardless. Okay, there is no easy way out. Even if we do all the right things, right, there's still going to be pain. There's going to be pain by a lot of people who are going to lose a government benefit, that people are going to lose a job. I mean, between the time they lose their current job and get another job, people are going to see lower wages. I mean, people are going to see a reduced value of their savings through a diminished dollar. Even if we do the right things, the dollar is still going to go lower. And these are the consequences of a generation of profligacy. I mean, we squandered our wealth. I mean, we inherited a lot of wealth from our parents and grandparents, and instead of, being good stewards of that wealth and growing it, we just squandered it all. We had a gigantic party where we just consumed everything, and we allowed the industrial base of our economy to disintegrate. We've got to pay the price for that. There's just no way around it. I mean, if you don't exercise and you overeat, you get fat. If you want to get healthy, the price to pay is diet and exercise. And maybe it's not a change that you enjoy, but it's something that's necessary. And we're in the same situation. So even under the best circumstances, there's going to be pain. But unfortunately, because the politicians don't want to acknowledge that, it's going to be excruciating pain, and it's going to last a long time. As I said, it could destroy the very fabric of our country. And in the end, the best thing to do might not be just what I'm doing now with my investments and my clients, which is helping them invest abroad. It would be very sad if ultimately what we all had to do is leave. And it would also be it would be sad if, the government wouldn't let us leave. And I do believe that at some point in the next 4 or 5 years, the government is going to have exchange controls and is going to make it illegal or almost impossible for Americans to get their money into foreign currencies, to get their money out of the country, to buy precious metals. And the next step after that would be to make it physically impossible to leave the country.
Perhaps a new form of protectionism, huh?
Who knows what they're going to do. But look, they keep on doing one thing after another. Again, I think there's